Andreas and I thought this would be a great opportunity to meet some of the artists that are part of the 10 Encounters show currently on view at Olfactory Art Keller. And so, Omer, we were hoping you could start us off just by introducing yourself and your practice.
Well, I am one of the artists at the exhibition first, first of all, so it is relevant. I also make bespoke perfumes for special people, let's say. I make some like compositions that are more like briefs. They're very small though, and I also have my independent perfume brand, which I make my crazy stuff, and people somehow buy them.
So for this exhibition, what was the meeting that you chose to interpret?
It was the meeting of Shahmaran and Camasb or Jamshab, depending on who you're listening it from. So basically, a poor human reflecting everything about humans, and this snake human god woman who represents everything else. It's like a 10,000 years old story, and also it's about someone very ancient. Should I just tell my version of the story,
Yeah,
or
totally.
is this
Yeah,
one enough?
totally.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever you learned,
So
from that.
basically, it has a lot of variations. The story being an oral story rather than something written down. My favorite version is Jamshab hears his friends talking about this well made full of honey in the mountainside. And they need him to they want to just drop him down with a rope and steal all the honey and get out and be rich. And he says, okay. So they do that, but Jamasp gets left down in the well, and his friends don't really care. They go back to the city, and Jamasp is left there, but eventually finds his way into the mountains. And after going through this cavernous place, he stumbles upon this amazing garden with things he has never seen before, flowers he has never seen before, and like organized in such a way that hides an intention he cannot grasp. So I chose that as the pinnacle point of this encounter, because at that moment he gets to meet the Snake Queen. So he becomes the Snake Queen's prisoner. After this, well, she does not allow him to leave the caves. Afterwards, he becomes her student, and eventually they become lovers. But then, of course, Jamasp gets bored and misses his mother and wants to go back out in the world again. Somehow love doesn't cut it anymore, I guess. He also misses cucumbers. That's part of the story too. So something very mundane.
Specifically cucumbers?
Yeah, cucumbers, some food objects. So it's not just his family. He misses the mundane things of the outside. So Shahmaran eventually thinks and thinks and thinks, and tells him that he can leave, but he has to never speak of anyone about her, and he has to never bathe with other people. He cannot go to like public baths and hammams. He says okay and leaves. So eventually the king of the realm gets very sick, and the vizier says, we have to find and eat Shahmaran. That's the only cure for the disease you have. And asks around for Shahmaran. Jamas hears of this, doesn't say anything. Then it becomes like everybody is forced to go to the public baths and have a bath, because apparently when you drop water over your body, scales show up on your body if you spend time in Shahmaran's garden. So anyway, they see the scales on Jem's body. They take him to the palace. The vizier makes him tell the location of Shahmaran by saying he'll kill his family and stuff. He eventually gives the location. They bring Shahmaran, and Shahmaran says, there are three parts of my body. To Jamasb, he tells this. There are three parts of my body. My head is poisonous. My body gives healing, and my snake is eternal knowledge. So anyway, they kill Shahmaran and separate her to 3 pieces. Then Jam becomes overwhelmed by emotion and just runs and eats the head and just drops down dead. Then the vizier prepares the rest of the meat, the snake part and the body. They feed the king with the body of Shahmaran, and he is healed. And when the vizier eats the snake, he also drops down dead.
The eternal knowledge was that the part that was the eternal knowledge? Is that correct?
Oh yeah, no. So apparently, Shahmaran knew this was going to happen.
Oh,
So lied.
I see. So she tricked them.
That is the story.
That's a beautiful story.
Yeah, I mean, that's a incredibly complex and emotional story. So how did you go about interpret that as a scent? Right? I can imagine so many different angles from which to approach that. Did you go
the time limit? The time limit definitely helped. I mean, I normally take a much more longer time for my processes. I go through a lot of iterations to come up to a certain point, but right now, this time I didn't have too much time. So my first approach was to think, I mean, I already had made some sketches about this, by the way, before this exhibition. We've talked about this with you, Saskia. So I had this idea about something green that resembles poison somehow, that evokes that feeling inside us. But for this one, I didn't know what would be the climax point, like what would be the central piece. My first thought went to, so I just Googled basically underground flower. And apparently there is this orchid that's in a symbiosis with fungus that grows underground. So I read about it. I read some gas chromatography, like what are the aromatic compounds in that. So I created an orchid accord that would be specific to that area. So it is part imaginary and also part scientific. But then I found that too rigid, not expressive enough. So I thought I would make the garden instead. Like Shahmaran is this healer also, and has people to take care of. So she is also kind of like an alchemist and a botanist. So I imagined what she would have for like things to gather for her own perfume shop or attar shop, whatever it is. So I made that the focus. I included the Rhizantella, the orchid accord, into the perfume. I also included the ambience, like an underground place, like a spacious place that a river runs by. So when all the 3 combined together, I think it did give a good sense of an other alien kind of thing, that it feels familiar, but also feels dangerous. Like, what is this about? Is it going to kill me? Am I going to kill him? What's going to happen here? Kind of tension. And I think it helps when you try to do that with scent, because it's so powerful and evoking. And of course, there are lots of toxic materials inside, actually, which also created another layer into this poisonous perfume.
Like what? Can you share?
Like what? For example, calamus root. You cannot use calamus root, especially in that amounts in perfume. Like, you know, it goes way beyond the IFRA regulations for safe wearable use. Also, some other materials inside are like has drug uses, like Syrian rue, for example, is a famous drug. It is legal, by the way, but it's kind of like a psychoactive compound. There's also a cannabis accord inside. So things like that, yes. Toxic, psychedelic, everything that shouldn't be in perfume, I put inside this one.
I love it.
What did you think of it, though? I want compliments. I haven't been to the exhibition.
Well, first let Andreas ask his question, and then we'll give you compliments.
Okay, deal.
Yeah, the ability to use those things at higher level than when one could in perfumes is a important difference when working in an art context rather than in a perfumery context. But I wondered if there's anything else, like, is it different for you? Is it a completely different process when you create something as just an
Yes.
object of beauty rather than a perfume? Or is it just you have more freedom in what to use inside of it?
Yeah. So, I mean, even it doesn't even have to be beautiful, in my opinion, when the idea is art. It can also be about like, I consider two things with art, like truth and beauty. So it doesn't have to be beautiful all the time. There's the sort of aesthetic that speaks both to your idea of beauty and truth. Of course, there are lots of differences. I mean, art, when you say it's art, you have much more freedom. But like speaking objectively, I don't have to think about, for example, how it wears on you. When you're creating perfume, you have to take into consideration how it's going to be when it's worn, rather than something when you just smell it. There is also a third aspect, which is how does it project? So in perfume, you have to consider these 3 points. When it's just the context of art, I don't worry about regulations, but I also don't worry about certain functions of the composition also. It is like for one person only. It's very, very freeing, which I really enjoyed, this much freedom.
Is it compliment time or?
I don't know, was that enough?
Well, Andreas, I stepped away quickly. So Andreas, did you have a follow-up question or? You're muted, huh? He's muted.
Andreas, I cannot hear you.
You're on mute, Andreas.
You're still on mute, Andreas.
There he is.
I'm sorry, I was just like
No worries. No worries.
giving all kinds of compliments.
I feel better about
Other people
yeah.
doing the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that struck me about your piece was the color when I first got it. It's so very dark,
Yeah.
which is actually an interesting part of the whole exhibit. Like in previous exhibits, it was all clear liquids, and this one has, I think yours is the darkest one, but it looks more dangerous already, even before you smell it. And yeah, I did like I haven't heard about the story before and just read a small summary of it, and I expected like the obvious way to go would be to create that beautiful garden, right? So like it is not only in color but also in smell and intention much darker than I thought the obvious interpretation of the story. Also, the story is dark too, right? In its content for sure. But yeah, I found it very interesting. I found it interesting. You said it's like poisonous. It should be like, should scare you. That's a
yeah. Was it scary? I mean, it should be like not too scary. I hear Spyros's one is pretty scary, the Minotaur one. This one is, I think mine is more of a tension thing, like almost the opposite version of what algorithmic perfumery did with AI. So instead of human compared to something after, this is like a human compared to something that was more ancient, I think.
Okay, that's interesting.
I mean, there is certainly a sort of dark dustiness to it, which I really like about it. You know, it doesn't feel cheerful, which Andreas touched on a little bit, and very complex, you know. So I'm sorry that people watching this can't smell, but hopefully Ömer's description gave you a little bit of a picture. And then, of course, if you want to smell it, you can check it out at Olfactory Art Keller during the show, but also after, because Andreas will be keeping the materials on hand for
Absolutely.
for purchase. These are art pieces
Yes.
that go in the home and are purchased, not worn, and appreciated as art pieces. not
Are
as
there going
perfume.
to be like archived also? Like if I can drop by in like 3 months, can I smell what the other people did? Because I'm very curious about them.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay,
and,
good.
Yeah. And I also have some of them too, Omer. So both New York and LA, you can smell.
Okay, great
Although
to hear.
Andreas has the more complete collection, I'm missing a few. So
I'll send you the missing ones, like samples of the missing ones, so we have a full set on both locations.
that would be good, I think.
That would be great. Yes, very
Yeah.
appreciate.
Yeah. Well, Omar, I think that's about it. Is there any last sort of thoughts you have about the purpose of perfumery in the context of art, or are there any tensions you find interesting between perfumery and art? You know,
I think they're getting like more and more enmeshed. Like there has already been many steps towards it, making it possible. I mean, now perfumers have names, and people who aren't perfumers are making things to be worn. So it is all very fluid right now, which I'm enjoying. I think presenting scent in a more free context like art is very valuable. There already have been like no IFRA regulations in the United States, such which has given us some amazing things to smell. But I think this is an even better step like to take. What can we consider something to smell? What can we consider is beautiful and good? It's ever expanding, and that makes me very happy.
yeah, yeah. Well, good. Well, Omar, thank you for participating, and
Thank you for making me a part of this.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.